I'm very excited to be here. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
All right, terrific. So with this program, I like to do an overview of what is bird banding, why is it important, as well, walk you through the process. Not everybody's had a chance to visit a bird banding station. Some of the things that we've learned so far in the last 10 or 15 years. And as an educator, I have to have a quiz. So I like to end many of my talks with a bird quiz, bird ID quiz. And I have some easy pictures, and then some harder ones. So, with Audubon groups, you never know. You're going to get a diverse bunch of people. And then if you want to put, I'm not super good with the Zoom chat, so at the end we can take as many questions as you'd like. So anyway, I'll dive in. All right, so a little bit about the history of bird banding. In Europe, the first record of a metal band being put on a bird was actually on a peregrine falcon. I think it was one of the kings of in France. His favorite falconry bird was a peregrine falcon, had a metal band attached to the bird's leg, and I think it was recovered in Turkey or northern Africa. I forget exactly where, but so that was the first documented use of a band on a bird's leg. And then, of course, in the United States, we have, everyone knows who John James Audubon is, and you may or may not know the story of how he had some nesting phoebes on his property, and he had wondered, okay, are these the same phoebes that were here last year, or do they come back, or what happens to them? So he actually put a silver thread on the legs of a couple fledglings before they fledged, and then sure enough, the next year, one or two of them had returned. So that's back in the day, a long time ago. Then in the early 1900s, it got more formalized. The Smithsonian involved, made it more scientific. Then in the 20s, they created something called the North American Bird Banding Program. Now, the what we have now is the Bird Banding Laboratory, and it's within the U.S. Geological Survey Department. So they're the ones who coordinate they keep all the records for all the birds that have been banded. They issue the bands. So actually, the licensed bird banders, such as myself, we don't have to pay for bands, knock on wood, for now. In Europe, from what I understand, in England and other countries in Europe, the banders actually have to pay for the bands, and so they can ban birds. But so it's a central um, location in Maryland, Patuxent, Maryland, and they keep all the records, and that's important, as you'll see in a little bit. All right, so why do scientists ban birds? There's several reasons. One is to determine their migratory pathways. Where are they going? Where are they stopping? How long are they stopping for? That sort of thing. Also, how long do these birds live? Okay, so looking at survival rates, what's killing them, also how long they live, their lifespans and that sort of thing. And then they can estimate the population sizes based on using banding. And actually, the very first time I was introduced to bird banding was during a summer internship in Nevada in college. I think it was between my junior and senior year of college. I was out in Nevada, and they needed help with a project. They were studying chukar partridges, which are introduced, and they hunt them, but they needed people to help with the banding. So me and a couple interns, we went and helped. And what they were doing is they were putting not only metal bands on the bird's leg, but they were putting temporary white flags in the wing of the bird. And then I guess a day or two later, they would fly over the habitat, over the area, in a helicopter, and they would count all the chukar partridges that flew out from under and then they used the ratio of how many had white wing patch or markers on them, and then they could estimate the population. So from that, they can determine how the populations are going up or down, and then they can establish bag limits for hunting, that sort of thing. Um, all the data, has allowed the government to come up with laws to protect the birds. and lots of birds are banded every year. Millions. Here's a table I pulled off of the Bird Banding Laboratories website. They didn't have electronic information about the early years, 1914 to 1959. They don't have, it's hard to get those records. They were actually on index cards, and they haven't digitized them, but you can see how many millions of birds have been banded. And most of them are songbirds, over 33 million birds. So it's a lot of birds. So when I learned how to band up in Wisconsin, I was working at a nonprofit up in a nature center in the Milwaukee area, and that's where I learned to band birds. It was in the, I guess, late 90s. And then I moved to another position at another center in the city, and we were banding, doing migratory bird banding in the city of Milwaukee along the Milwaukee River. So when I moved down to Florida for the second time in 2004, I started looking around. I was working for Pinellas County at Brooker Creek Preserve, and fortunately, they wouldn't let me ban birds. So it took a job change to the school I'm at now, and also talking with some local bird people. It's, where to band, and anyway, so I started banding. Actually, I started banding at the school in 2011, I think. Um, but this project we're going to talk more about is where I'm doing it now on Caladesi Island. So the idea was, okay, let's look and see what birds are moving through the coastal barrier islands, what species are there, try to figure out how important these barrier islands are to these migratory birds. And then long term, the idea is to compare the birds and the migration that we've got going on the West Coast with the East Coast, and then also in Central Florida, because there's a bander who many of you probably know, Andrew, who bands in Lake Lotus, which I think is west side of Orlando. I've never been to his banding site, but there's also a long-term banding project in Miami. So they have over 20 years of data. So the idea is to compare across the peninsula how the banding is going on, or how the migration is going on. So as I mentioned, I started banding in at my school in Learning Gate Community School. So there's a yellow dot there right north of Tampa. I live in Dunedin, which is over near Clearwater, just north of Clearwater. I also started at a local park in Dunedin, which is the middle of the yellow dots. That's actually where Hammock Park is, and that's a different habitat altogether. So all three locations have very different habitats. So the school is an oak hammock, more dry upland habitat, forested habitat. Hammock Park is a hydric hammock, so it's very dense, different composition of plants. So I banded there for 8 or 9 years, but it was a public park, so lots of public outreach and education. But after a while, it got to be too many dog walkers and runners and walkers and all that. So I decided to move out to Caladesi Island. So that's the third location. So I still band once in the spring, once in the fall. I do a public bird banding demonstration in Hammock Park, which anybody's welcome to come check out. And then at school, I do it every 5 days every spring and fall. And we do 5 or 6 days on Caladesi every spring and fall. So those are the locations that I've been banding since I've been here. So as far as the process goes, we catch some pretty secretive things, birds that are hard to document, things like this Kentucky warbler, which a lot of people haven't even seen them. So that's the cool part. So the goal is to get select a good location where there are lots of birds. You choose locations where in the park or preserve or habitat, wherever you are, you look for good corridors and pathways where the birds are moving through. And I had birded in the hammock for several years before I started banding there. So I knew the best parts of the park that would lend themselves well to banding. Then we set up the nets. They're called mist nets, and you'll see in a minute that they're pretty fine nets, and they're 12 meters long by 2.5 meters tall. So it's about 36 feet long and about 10 feet tall. And we stretch them between two poles. And so we set the nets up and open the nets 30 minutes before sunrise. At least that's the goal. Sometimes we don't reach that goal. But here you see we're starting to check the nets. So we set up our banding station. Um, some banders, they'll band off the back of a truck. It depends on where they are, how remote it is. This, we actually got fancy after a year or two and put up a pop-up tent. And so this is where we actually do the banding. So it's a central location where we're near where all the nets are set up. And then, you got to have certain equipment and tools. Got to have the bird books in case you don't know exactly what you're looking at. We also have a scale, and I joke with my students. Most of my students, since I work with elementary students, they don't know what these black containers are. I call them archaeological artifacts. So if you're over a certain age, you recognize these as film containers. So I use those to keep the bands organized. So different size bands are in each of the different containers. So you can see them labeled size 0, 1, 2, 1B, 1A, things like that. Um, so then we start checking the nets. So every 30 minutes we go check the nets. Sometimes we go more often if it's warmer or if it's a little more windy than we would like. So we always keep the safety and health of the birds at the forefront. And so we're checking the nets every 30 minutes and whatever we catch. In this case, we caught a red-eyed vireo. The birds fly, they don't see the net. They fly into what's called the pocket and they fall in to the pocket. And then, when we get there, usually the birds are just hanging out like this. And then we, as quietly and quickly and efficiently as possible, we take the birds out of the net. Um, and then we put them into a bag. So here, one of the volunteers that had been working with me for several years is extracting a Carolina wren. Then we put them in a bag, which I know to some people think, oh, wow, that seems kind of mean. Well, they're cloth bags, and as we all learned during COVID, you can breathe through fabric like a mask, but it actually calms the birds down. And when I was doing this up north, it actually helped keep the birds warm. So we were banding, we'd start banding and be in the 30s or low 40s. And here, I don't think my fingers would function at that temperature anymore. But so here we have a clothesline out, and we process the birds in the order that we got them. So again, we're trying to keep them as low amount of time as possible, and then we release the birds, as you'll see in a minute. So first step after you catch the bird, safely extract it from the net. You put it in the bag. They bring it back to the banding station. Then one at a time, we're pulling the birds out, and we need to identify the bird. So in this case, we have a perthonotary warbler. So for a number of years, I had a volunteer, Dave, who was a good photographer, and he loved taking pictures of the bird with a picture of the bird. So you'll see a few of those in here. But so here we identify the bird, and then we measure the leg. This is a special tool known as a leg gauge, and most of the birds we also have a cheat sheet that tells us exactly what band is recommended size. But if you're not sure, you double check it with this leg gauge, and you can see size 1, 1B, 1A, they gradually get larger and larger. The largest band size that I use right now is size 4, and that would fit on something like a pileated woodpecker. Smallest is 0A, and that's for warblers, some of the smaller warblers, ruby crown kinglet, blue-gray gnatcatcher, that sort of thing. Actually, there's a discussion among the banding community about trying to create a band size that's smaller than 0A for birds like a ruby crown kinglet, because their legs are so tiny. So once we know what size band to put on the bird, we take the band out of the container one at a time. They come to me in a string of 100 bands, and they're serially numbered, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 5, 1, 2, 6, and so forth. Each band is imprinted with a 9-digit number, and it's unique for that band size. And here I'm using the banding pliers. They have a special pin on them that helps you to open the band, and then you put the band when it's open in the pliers where the circular gap is, and then there's a gap at the front of the plier that you can slide the bird's leg in, and then carefully have the bird's leg inside the band itself, and then carefully and quickly clamp down on the pliers, and then open the pliers, and then the bird's got a band on its leg, and it will be on its leg for the rest of its life. So once we have the bird in the hand, we try to gather as much information as possible. I'm particularly interested in the migratory birds, so I mean, we will ban anything that we catch that's small enough that I have bans for, but we're really interested more so in the migrants. So in this case, we're looking at how much fat the bird has. This looks like it's probably a red-eyed vireo, but you can look that you can see the muscle. The muscle is red, so that's the breast, the flight muscles there. And above it is a small hollow. If you feel in your bottom of your neck, there's like a little hollow above the bones. Um, and the birds have a little hollow there. It's called the furcular hollow, and that's where they store fat. And fat is energy. So these birds are flying hundreds of miles potentially in a given night, and they need gas in the gas tank, if you will. So they store the fat there. If a bird has just arrived, that'll be empty. And so they'll probably hang around for a few days to a week, maybe, and then they're fattening out, and then they wait for the next front and the next set of tailwinds, and then off they go. These birds fly at night, so which is pretty impressive. Um, so you can see the fat. This would be a fat of at least five to six. The scale is from 0 to 7. 0, as I mentioned, you don't see any of that orange color. Fat, the hollow fills up, and then a fat of 6 or 7. The bird stacks the fat under its wing pits and then in the lower abdomen. And some of these birds, like blackpoll warblers, can pack on they're like 2 times their normal weight. And somehow they manage to fly from North Carolina straight, nonstop to Brazil. That's just amazing. So we also look at their feathers. I'm looking at the wing, studying the feathers, trying to determine its age, and if you can. And there are certain clues that we look for that help us determine how old the bird might be. This is a great example, especially in the fall. I think in the hammock, there was one day we caught, I don't know, 15, 20 wood thrushes, which was really great. Here you can see the difference between what's called a hatch year bird, or a bird that was born that most recent summer, and then in the as it ages, it molts out its feathers. So twice a year or once a year, at least once a year, if not twice a year, depending on the species, they molt out their feathers. So usually younger birds, to get out of the nest, they put in quick feathers just to get out of the nest where they're most vulnerable, and then they put on quick feathers that aren't high quality, and then usually the next year they add, they'll molt out their body feathers and all their flight feathers, wing coverts, tail feathers, that sort of thing. But here the arrow is pointing at the secondary coverts, the little feathers that are above the secondary feathers on the wing. And you notice the hatch-ear bird has those buffy tips. And so when the bird closes its wing, it looks like a wing bar. That's what the wing bar is. And but on the adult birds, you see that bird's at least a year and a half. It could be 5 years old. It's hard to tell, but some birds you can tell, but not many. So that's one way you can tell the age of a bird, at least whether it's a hatch year or what's called after hatch year. Another thing you can look at, blue jays. This is a young blue jay. You can tell by looking at the alula feathers, these feathers here that the arrow is pointing at. When they're young, they lack the black bars on the feather, and when they molt those out, they molt in their adult feathers. Those feathers would actually have black bars, just like the feathers to the left of the arrow. Typically, we only catch hatchy or young blue jays. I guess they're just too smart, or they learn quickly. I say we catch the young and dumb ones, but then we don't catch many adults. And they're on the bigger side of birds that get caught in the net. Sometimes I'll see blue jays, grackles, things like that. They'll be in the net and they'll be flapping their wings. It looks like they're doing a backstroke, and they're moving along the pocket of the net. And if they make it to the end of the net, they'll fly out and they're gone. So the bigger birds don't usually get caught in the net because the mesh size is 30 millimeters, I believe. So they're designed for smaller birds. If I were targeting, say, hawks or larger birds, I'd have stronger net mesh and larger mesh for catching them. So other data that we gather what's called the wing chord. It's the length of the wing when it's folded. And I have a special wing ruler to measure that. And we're gathering all this data. We're sharing it with the bird banding lab and all other ornithologists and researchers. And with some species, I believe with blue jays, depending on the length of the wing chord, can sometimes help you determine whether it's a male or female. So, and if you look closely under my finger there, you can see the band on the bird's leg. So again, putting the band on the bird is the first thing after we identify it, because if the bird gets away, at least we know what kind of bird it was, when we caught it, where we caught it, and the number that's on it and the species. So um, the last thing we do before we release the bird, and this looks traumatic, and it is for the bird for 3 seconds or 5 seconds. We weigh them in a digital scale in a tube. Again, it takes just a few seconds. This is a Carolina wren that we're weighing. We do it very, very fast. Then the last part, and this is something that visitors to the banding demonstration in the hammock can help with, is releasing the birds. So that's everybody's favorite part. So the person releasing the bird is just a platform, really. And sometimes the birds hang out, sometimes for 10 seconds, 5 seconds, sometimes a minute. This is a worm-eating warbler that we caught. So here's some of the data sheets that we use. We're gathering all sorts of information. And this page talks about the recaptures that we've gotten. I've included a few graphs, few tables, just to give you a really quick overview. As I mentioned in Calidisi, we've been banding every spring and fall since 2019. You'll notice a couple low dates, like spring 2020. You might remember something significant happened in 2020 in the spring. That was during COVID. So we were only allowed to be out there, I think, 1 or 2 days when we set up, and then COVID hit and the park closed and said we can't be out there. So we weren't out there until we went back to collect all of our polls. So that was one blip in our data. You can see we've had some really successful seasons with over 200 birds in a season, or 225 birds, but it's really hit or miss. And by being out there only 1 day a week, it's, some days you get good days and a lot of days you get really bad days. So a lot of it's weather dependent. So as we know as birders, good fronts or what have you push the migrants through, but that helps us in banding too. But if it's too windy, we don't catch anything because the birds see the nets. The other blip you'll see is fall 2024. You might remember that there were a couple wee storms that came through. They hit Calidisi very, very hard. We had 2 storms back to back. I think it was Milton. One of the storms, the storm surge covered most of Calidisi Island with about 4.5 feet of salt water. And so as a result, the following spring, or that fall and then in the spring, you can see it's very low. The habitat was really damaged. The understory, honestly, it looked like when I went out there, I just wasn't thinking about the impacts of the hurricane, but it looked like somebody had sprayed Roundup on all the understory vegetation because it was all dead. So it's going to be interesting to see how it comes back over time. So some of the highlights, we've been doing this for a while, 7 years now, going on 7 years, over 1,200 birds that we've banded. I think we're over 60 species. I think we're more at 63, 64 species banded. Lots of recaptures. And then these are some of the species that are cool that we've caught over the years. Not a lot. A lot of these we caught once or a couple times. Blue grosbeaks, blackpoll warbler, I think we've only caught once. Some tanagers, Swainson's warbler, Connecticut warbler, I'd always wanted to catch a Chuckles widow, and we finally did it, I think 2 years ago. They do nest out on Caladesi, and then we've caught over 25 different species of warblers in total, so pretty neat. This picture I really love. This is a summer tanager, a male, and you can see this is a great bird to show people the pattern that the birds molt in. So this is a second year male in the spring probably, and then by next year this bird would be totally red. So it's got half juvenile plumage, half adult plumage, so it's really pretty cool. Um, I can't do this without volunteers. I'm a volunteer doing this, and I have a crew of volunteers. Also, the state park, Honeymoon, Caladesi Island, they help us. Occasionally, they'll bring our golf cart out and back, and then if we have extra volunteers, they come out on the park boat. The Caladesi Island ferry, if you've ever been to Caladesi Island, you need to take a ferry to get there. That's the way most people get there, or bring their own boat from Honeymoon over. But the ferry will take us back and our volunteers back when we're done in the morning or by noon. We've gotten some donations from Clearwater Audubon, St. Pete Audubon, and other folks who've contributed to help us underwrite the costs of doing this work. So you're probably wondering, oh, what are the top 10 birds that you've caught, or top 11 in this case, because I couldn't leave out number 11. So our most banded bird is the one you see here, as you might imagine, because when they're here, they're everywhere. I know one of our busiest days ever, we had I think we had 136 birds in a morning. 90 of them were catbirds. So we get a ton of catbirds. White-eyed vireos. These are birds, that love staying in the understory. They stay low to the ground. So that's, why we catch them. Common yellowthroats as well. We get also the resident birds, cardinals, and then we're lucky enough to get hooded warblers, indigos, and you can see the numbers drop off a little bit. Ovenbird, if you're really sharp, you might have noticed the logo that we have for the Florida Avian Conservation is actually an ovenbird. When we were banding in Hammock Park, we catch a ton of ovenbirds there, and I catch a bunch at school too. Less so out on Caladesi, and then wood thrushes I mentioned earlier, and then Swainson's thrushes. So we do a good catch a number of thrushes. So that's pretty neat. That gives you an idea of kind of what we've caught. And this is just a different version. Again, gives you an idea of the proportion of the birds that we catch. Those top three account for a huge percentage of our totals going back in time. So what do we learn? A lot of times this bird banding, this is old technology, not even technology, but it's been going on for a very, very long time. I've been doing it for a long time, and only twice have I had what's called people find the birds that I've banded. And these are the two birds. We were banding in Hammock Park in 2019, and I remember it was a busy day. We had over 80 birds, lots of thrushes and catbirds and such. But so if you look at the dates here, the next spring and summer, two of the birds that we banded in October in Dunedin were recovered. One was a catbird way up in Massachusetts, and another one was a Swainson's thrush that was caught in Minnesota. So those two are the only two recoveries of birds that we banded. Unfortunately, both these birds were window kills. So they were discovered by homeowners. And in one case, it was a contractor who's a duck hunter. So he knew what a band was, but he had never seen one as small as the one that was on the catbird. So fortunately, the banding. So if you find a banded bird and you report it to its reportband.gov, and the banding lab will get that record, get that information. You would say, oh, we found a catbird, it's got this number on it. This is where we're located. And then they will match it up in their database with the person who banded the bird. So I got an email from the banding lab about these two recoveries. And fortunately, they were okay with sharing their email, and I emailed both the people and got the story about how they came about finding the birds. So But it's kind of interesting to see where these birds go when they come through Florida. Um, some go to the Northeast and some are going up, and that Swainson's thrush could have been headed up into Canada, to nest. So pretty interesting. So I mentioned the public outreach and education. These are pictures from the hammock. We get a lot of families and children and that sort of thing. Sometimes my students come to see the banding because the parents don't usually get to see the banding that their kids get to see. So we're always educating. Um, a little bit more about Caladesi. I should be watching the time, so I'm sure Deborah will let me know when I need to stop talking. But so if you're not familiar with the west coast of Florida, where Caladesi Island is, it's at the sort of at the top of Pinellas County, and it's just south of Honeymoon Island. Of course, it's on the coast. This picture on the right is a close-up. So the red dot there where it says Caladesi Island State Park, that's the little marina. So when you take the ferry, or if you go over in your own boat, that's where you enter the park and you pay your fee. 99% of the people walk straight across to the beach. That's all they're interested in. There is a nature trail down into the southern part of the park. Um, and then if you see all those lines on the right side, those are all old mosquito ditches. So that's all mangroves. So if you look where the green dot is, that's where we're actually banding. It's about 3/4 of a mile south of the marina. So for the first year, this is how, I don't know, maybe some would say we're crazy. I would just say we're dedicated. Uh, we walked in the dark, carrying our equipment. Um, it took us 30 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that, to get down to our study site and then walk back. So after a couple of years of that, we said, this is ridiculous and got a golf cart. So anyway, so that's the stars where our banding station is. So it's in a restricted area of the park. It's an area where the shop is and there's some residences there and that sort of thing. But when I was looking for a study site, that was the place that looked the most promising, and it's proved to be pretty productive. So some of the research questions, more specific, looking at the use of these by migrants of the Gulf Coast, the importance of these barrier islands, and then more recently, how did these hurricanes impact, how these birds are using the islands. So we're actually working on a publication, utilizing our data from before the hurricane and then after the hurricane, and it's pretty interesting, or will be. This is what it looks like. So when we're walking down or using our golf cart, this is the habitat. This is a pine flatwoods. The park does a really good job of managing it. So they do burn it on a regular basis. So that's important. So some of the challenges, I mentioned transportation. I joke that, we moved from the hammock, which was an easy to access park that's open to the public and we can drive right up to it. We moved to an island. So as you might envision, to get to that island, you need a boat. So we need to find somebody with a boat. So we managed to do that. And getting around on the island, that sort of thing, we need to come up with things or ways to get around. Land management, I mentioned that the park burns. They do communicate with us. I think the first time they did it, we didn't know they had burned, and we got out there, and half of our net locations were black. There was no plants, so we weren't going to be catching anything in those areas. So that's just part of it. So some of the other challenges I mentioned: hurricanes, weather. If it's too windy, small craft advisories, that sort of thing. We don't go out. We do have one rain date scheduled, and it's usually early May, and then early November in the fall. So those are some of the challenges. And of course, the pandemic was a big challenge for everyone. So some of the things we've caught out at Caladesi that are of interest. This one, we've only caught one of these, the blue-winged warbler. I was very excited to see that bird. This is the one I mentioned that I really was hoping to catch. And we really need to get out onto the island, especially in the spring earlier. Maybe get our nets open an hour before, then we catch some screech owls, and we definitely catch more Chuckwill's widows. What a cool bird. This one, super exciting. This was early May, so this is a late spring migrant, this bird, and we caught it on our rain date. We had, and while we were out there, we're out there all morning, checking the nets every 30 minutes. We saw at least one or two others on the island. So this is a bird that's dramatically declining, as are most of them, but this one especially. I know in Wisconsin and Minnesota, they're really trying to gather as much information about Connecticut warblers as possible because they're not doing well. But this is one advantage of doing banding. These birds are so hard to find, especially not on the breeding grounds. They're probably easier because they're singing, but on migratory stopover locations like Caladesi Island and places in Florida, they're so secretive. It's hard to see them, so it's hard to study them. So we have had recaptures. So I mentioned the two birds that were recovered, but oftentimes we get the birds that come back, or in the case of the cardinals, titmice, those types of birds are residents. So we can catch these for years, over and over and over again. Things like catbirds, they migrate through. We've caught several that, almost to the day, one year to the next. So they're using these locations. They find good habitat. They're going to come back. It's the analogy I use is you go on a road trip to grandma's house, or you use the highway or whatever, and you common trip. The best gas stations, the best restaurants, and you stop at them. Who has the best pie? You're going to stop there. So we've caught great crested flycatchers, which do nest out on Caladesi. Things like house wrens, I should say northern house wren now. Palm warblers we've recaptured. Sometimes it's, you catch them from 1 week to the next and then you don't see them again. Or sometimes like this cardinal we caught 5 years later. Trying to think the more exciting things we've recaptured, probably more so at the school where I'm at in Lutz. We have one ovenbird we captured 5 years in a row in the fall, every year for 5 years. Same bird. So that tells you a lot about how valuable our 25 acres of forest is to that particular ovenbird and probably many others. So here's a great crested flycatcher. So this, I don't know, Chuckwell's widows are hard to see, easy to hear, especially in the spring, but finding them. But when they're sitting there, they look like a clump of, dead leaves. But to actually have one in the hand, this is a video clip. I want you to watch, when we release this bird, watch its mouth. It's incredible. Look at that. And the friend of mine who bands over in Miami, they've caught a number of these in their park, in Bill Baggs State Park where they band. And they even had one they caught had a northern water thrush in its mouth. So they do eat small songbirds as well as insects. So kind of frightening, actually, if you think about it. All right. This was another cool bird that we caught. These are two of our young birders. You might recognize Alex from your neck of the woods. And this is Christopher, who lives in Plant City. I'd only seen one of these before, I think in the park. Yeah. This is a young dickcissel. And it was bizarre because you always think of dickcissels as being in field habitats. And this is a hammock, a forest. So that was a pretty cool bird. So that's part of the fun. You never know what you're going to catch. I have to say the other bizarre thing that we caught, probably the rarest thing we caught in the hammock, was a winter wren, which I'd never seen in Florida before. But I know they winter in North Florida. And I had banded them in Wisconsin, but that was pretty cool. So the future, I mentioned banding the bird, putting the metal bands on the birds is old school, really. The future is in the technology, as you might imagine. Things like geolocators. So if you look at this painted bunting, this has what's called a geolocator on its back. So that device actually records the pretty precise GPS location. Depending on what it's scheduled for, it could do it once a day, every other day, whatever. It's powered by a little solar panel or maybe a very long life battery. They'll last, a couple of years usually. The trick with a geolocator is you have to recapture that bird again to get any of that data. then you take that device off the bird, plug it into a computer, and wham, you've got tons of detailed data of where that bird has been hanging out in the last year. So typically geolocators are deployed on birds in areas where they're breeding. So, and it's typically the males. They use recordings, call the bird in, catch it, band it. In this case, this bird was color banded too. So you see the red and white plastic bands in addition to the silver aluminum band. Um, that's so that they can identify these individuals without having to recapture the bird again. So geolocators are one way. Another one is nanotags and the remote receivers. If you look in the lower right corner, the white device there, that's a nanotag. It can be glued onto the back of the bird, on the bird's feathers. It'll stay there until the bird molts those feathers out, or sometimes they have a different harness. It depends on the species, how they're put onto the bird. Um, and the weight of these it's incredible. They now have them down to below 1 gram. So, I haven't been trained to put these on, but I would be very interested in learning how to do it, and or having a grad student or somebody who has done that before and study, wintering ecology of ovenbirds or something like that. But with these nanotags, you don't need to capture the bird again. So if you look at the Modus tower there in the lower left, I think it looks like an old school TV antenna, but it's RFID technology, so it's a radio frequency, and every one of those little tags has a unique frequency, and it gets detected anytime the bird with that tag flies within 6 miles or so, 6 to 10 miles of one of these towers. And if you go on the Modus website, which I think I have a picture of, maybe not, but you can quickly go on it, you can see that there are hundreds of these towers being put up throughout North America and even now in Central and South America. And I think the Birds of Prey Center, the Audubon Birds of Prey Center, they just put one up recently. So from what I understand. So I mentioned the Modus Towers. I'm trying to get one put up at my school. It looks like Tampa Audubon is going to fund it. And then potentially we'll get one at Honeymoon Island too, which would be great. CTT is another company, another technology they're using to track birds. You might have seen the recent stories about their what do they call it, blue tags that use cell phones to detect them. So, and they're so small they can put them on monarch butterflies. So you could track where a monarch butterfly goes. So it's really cool stuff. Isotopes, if you're a biochemist or a chemistry person, that would certainly interest you. But we've been participating with Colorado State on a project called the Bird Genoscape Project. I think I have a slide of that. Let's see. Oh yeah, here's the Modus Towers showing you where they're popping up. There's quite a few of them around. And then the Bird Genoscape Project, they have this cool YouTube video called Tales of a Tail Feather. I give you an overview, probably much better than I can explain. But we're collecting tail feathers, 2 tail feathers from, they're interested in over 120 different species, and they're mapping it's like ancestry.com, ancestry for birds. So by collecting the tail feathers of a Kentucky warbler in Florida, they can use the DNA from that and the carbon and the profile, and they can tell pretty precisely where that bird molted in those new feathers on the wintering grounds. So they're collecting, let's use the Kentucky warbler for example. They're getting samples from the birds on their breeding range in the migratory stopovers, which is what we are for a lot of these birds, and then on the wintering grounds. And from that, they can build a map showing where these birds are hanging out. And that it's not just like, oh, it was in Costa Rica. No, it's on the west slope of Costa Rica in this region. And for some of these birds that are getting really, really rare, we need to prioritize the conservation efforts and the conservation land acquisition and that sort of thing for these species. If we want to keep them around, which we all love these birds, we need to protect not only the breeding grounds, not only the wintering grounds, but also the important migratory stopover sites. So Check that out. Tales of a Tail Feather is pretty cool. So we contribute to that greater project. I always like to include a slide about what people can do to help birds. Most people know these things, especially bird watchers, but it's never, it's always important to mention these things, maybe some of these things you don't know. Certainly, adding water to your landscape. I recommend much shallower water dishes than, say, a traditional bird bath. Also, if you can get moving water, or maybe if you position your bird dish or whatever your water source close to a hose, or where you can put a timer and a dripper. If you can get dripping, the sound of moving water, a waterfall, a water feature is even better because it draws the birds in like a magnet. And all birds need water. They don't all eat birdseed. So that's why the second step is naturalizing your landscape. If you can at least do half of your landscape with natives, planting beautyberry, and as we heard from Susan, tropical sage and things like that will provide a lot of benefit to birds. This is a controversial one, but there's really no argument. There's a lot of data out there about the negative impacts of cats on the birds. They're one of the largest sources of mortality. I think it's over 1 billion birds a year are killed by cats, and this might even be an underestimate. So if you want to learn more about that one, there's a great book called Cat Wars. It was written by a migratory bird scientist who's, I think, with Georgetown University now. A lot of facts, and it's basically it's better for your cat too to keep them inside, as well as better. It would have been better for this hooded warbler, that's for sure. If you want to learn some other tips and tricks, things you can do, Cornell has this thing, 7 Simple Actions. It includes these things. It'll talk about bird proofing your windows. That's a big one. Drinking shade-grown coffee versus traditional coffee, those kinds of things. Also participating in citizen science projects. So I always like to talk a little bit about my other passion project. In addition to studying migratory birds, I am very involved with Kathy and others around the state to create opportunities for young people to meet other birders their own age and learn more about bird careers and just enjoy birds. So in 2021 we started the Young Birders Club. Now we have chapters in the Sarasota, Minnesota we call it. So it's Manatee and Sarasota County, Northeast Florida, Jacksonville, or that area, Orlando, of course, with you guys. Tampa is the one I coordinate, and we also have one getting going in Gainesville. We'd love to have one in Tallahassee and certainly down in Southeast Florida, but we need to find the right mentors to help do this. But it's really been very rewarding just to see these kids growing up and coming out of their shells and talking to each other and learning from each other. And gosh, I learned from them. These kids are scary good. They are good. Like many of you probably know Hayden in your area, Ethan. They're just really, really knowledgeable. And it's been really cool. They're so creative. The logo, this is the logo designed by 2 of the young birders. Actually, Alex helped sketch this out, and another young birder, Charles. And then we also have these business cards. I'm just like, while I was waiting for you guys to get through your business, I was putting together packets. I don't know if you can see this, probably not. These are the business cards. So the idea is to put these in the hands of not only young birders, but certainly even adult birders, where there's a QR code on the back so the kids can scan it and join the club, essentially. But you have these on you. When you run into kids between the ages of 9 and 17, you can hand them a card and say, hey, if you want to meet other young birders around Florida, check out this club. It's $10 a year. It's really cheap. We had J Chats, which is our Zoom programs, where we were having them once a month for the first 2 years, and then we backed off of that. But as a way to connect the kids who are in areas that don't have a chapter of the Young Birders Club, so they can't necessarily get out with other young birders, And they can learn about research about birds in Florida and careers and all that sort of thing. So it's been pretty cool. So how can you help these efforts? You can share information about the Young Birders Club with other young people that live in Florida. Again, between the ages of 9 and 17. We have a a group page, so you can check that out. We have a website. It's very simple and basic, but steer any kids towards that. Just spread the word. That would be awesome. You can make a donation if you're so inclined. FOS is the sponsor statewide. So this is a statewide effort. The local chapters, like Orange Audubon, is sponsoring the Orlando chapter. Tampa Audubon sponsors the one in the Tampa area, that sort of thing. But FOS, the Florida Ornithological Society, um, is the fiscal agent because the Florida Young Birders Club is not its own nonprofit or anything like that. They also hold the money, and we're also working with them to create an endowment where we can have a pool of money to support young birders, bird initiatives. It could be conservation projects, it could be sending them to bird camps, which we're doing this last summer and this summer with Clearwater Audubon. So we're just hoping to expand that. So if you want to donate, you can donate to that fund and help build it up. And then if you know anybody in Southeast Florida or South Florida, Tallahassee area who's really into birds, an adult, you gotta like kids though. So that can help be mentors and help with the logistics and the keeping things rolling. So that would be a big help. So these are some of my banding volunteers. Some are mid-career, some are early career, and some are retired. So I've got people from all over. Um, the guy on the right is invaluable. Bert, he's our boat captain. He got the golf cart. He's one of those guys who can fix anything. So he's awesome, and all of them are awesome, and they're dedicated people helping learn more, study birds, and gather more information about birds. I mentioned some of the agencies and entities that are supporting us. I do have a blog. I'm not great at keeping it up, but usually during the season I'll post what we caught that particular week and some pictures and that sort of thing, so you can check that out. And anything, if anybody's got an old ATV laying around like that one or a new one, we could use one of those. I mentioned the Otis Tower, and we have a boat, but it only can carry 4 passengers. So if somebody had a boat they want to donate, give me a call. Let's see, I think that's a video. So that's the boat. Actually, it's Bert's boat that we use to get out there. Photography. My wife, Jen Zellick, is she helps me with the data entry. And then I mentioned all these volunteers. Couldn't do it without them. That's our fancy flag. So anyway, that we put on the boat so people can learn about us. All right, so it's up to you, Deborah and Susan, if you want. I can take questions now and then we can do the quiz, or we can do the quiz first and then take questions. I'm flexible.
As you wish. That
Yeah,
was really great. Thank
yeah, it was very fun.
You want
Um,
to do the quiz first?
sure.
I'll let you guys monitor the chat, and
Okay,
you
I got
two
it.
probably should be not that I have prizes. When I do this talk in person, I have stickers that Florida Avian Conservation stickers that I give out. That's the only swag I have pretty much. So, um, but I can't do that virtually. So anyway, so give others a chance. All right. So how about this one? We'll start easy, and you can look in the chat, see if somebody answered. You can read. You probably know the answer.
Hint, hint. Yeah, look,
Yeah. There you go. How about that? Is that a big
look
enough
at the
hint?
back.
Yes. All
You
right. This
guys
is a
can type
magnolia
your answer in the, yeah, magnolia
in the
warbler.
chat. All right. Let's see. We got a few more here. Well, that's one.
Oh, oh, so cute.
Well, it's better it bites a Q-tip than my finger.
Yes, yes.
So they
Or if
really
you
bite.
guys want to unmute, you could even just
Yeah, you can
do
unmute,
that.
make
All
it more
right, Laura's
interactive.
got cardinal. All right, northern cardinal.
our number one most visited, most customer.
Karen's got catbird. Great catbird.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. You
And
guys are
Debbie,
three for
too.
three.
Ooh, so pretty.
Yes. Do we stump them?
I don't know. Looks pretty blue to me. Karen says
Yeah.
blue grosbeak.
Oh, it does have some indigo color around its eyes.
Yeah, I was gonna say it looks like jeans. Yeah, there you go. Indigo bunting, right? Well, she's got indigo.
This one was in the slideshow, and I didn't
That's my
identify it.
favorite.
Is it? It's a
One
cool
of my
one.
favorites, yeah.
It's like picking your favorite child, though. It's hard.
That's true. That's true. Debbie's got it worm eating warbler.
Okay.
Now, everybody who goes to meet should know this one because we had one that stayed a couple of years ago for a long time.
Really?
Yep,
Let me-
Karen's got
All
it.
right.
Hooded warbler.
Nice. Now they're going to get a little more challenging here. So I'll give you a hint. The one on the left is our mascot bird for the Florida Avian Conservation.
Okay. Yep. So, ovenbird. Got it.
The one on the right is another warbler that oftentimes is confused as an
Yeah. Are
ovenbird,
there
or
two different ones?
there are.
There are. But this one, the
Give you a hint. This one
eyeline.
bobs the back end of its body when it's walking along the streams and
Ah,
river edge.
so northern water thrush is our guess.
There we go.
Very
Good.
good. Good.
We don't catch many of these. They're too big for
Oh,
the
that
nets.
that would have been hard probably to handle.
Yeah, they're
And
challenging.
again, pileated woodpecker. We got the answer. Good. Very good. All right. Oh, my favorites. My other favorite.
We got a lot of
Painted
favorites.
bunting. All right.
In the hammock, we catch a lot of these types of birds. So the top showed you two wings, one of a hat shear, one of an after hat shear.
Karen's got thrush.
Yeah, well, that
A
narrows it
wood
down.
thrush. Yep.
The other two, the middle one and the bottom one, are oftentimes confused for each other, mistaken for each other. So they're a lot, they're the thing to look at is around the eye and the face in particular. Do we have any guesses for these two? These are tougher.
Maybe
All right. No guesses?
swains. Great cheeked and
Yeah,
Swainson's. Yeah.
that has the buffy eye ring around it. The other does
Yeah.
not. So, all right. So I know I had harder ones in here. Gosh. Oh yeah, you got to have the hard ones. You guys are an Audubon club, right? How about these? There aren't many. There's just a few.
Ooh. Oh, Karen's got it. Perula. That's my guess
Okay.
too. Yeah, Northern Perula. Good job. I got these in my come to my feet are a little bit kind of blue looking. Looks like a big wing.
Not that big.
Blue jay.
No, it
No?
doesn't have the black lines on it.
Oh, it doesn't have the black. Ooh. Tricker. Indigo bunting. Oh,
This
love
is a
these guys.
highly sought after bird for a lot of birders, and they're tough to spot.
Swainson's warbler. She's got that. Highly sought after.
I call him the Jimmy Durante, if you know who he was. They had a really big nose, so they have a pretty large bill.
Aha. think we had this answer once. Yep, blue
Yes,
grosbeak.
that's a nice meow blue grosbeak. We've caught a handful of those. This one hiding the most important field mark, but can't make it too easy. Maybe the next
Does
picture will help.
it looks
Oh,
like it
sorry.
has yellow-throated warbler. We have the
Yeah, so it's from
guess.
the back.
Yeah.
That's right. So this one you saw earlier.
Oh yeah, they're so pretty. Prothonotary. Now, do those nest by in
They
Calabasas?
nest in Lettuce Lake Park, I believe, in Tampa, but
Uh-huh.
I haven't heard of them nesting in Pinellas County. I know I've seen them along the Silver River up in the Ocala area. So any wetlands, swamps, they nest
Mm-hmm.
in cavities. So they need to have cavities, but you can track them if they are around, and they will use artificial nest boxes, from what I understand.
We have them in the
So
Wakava
I've only
Basin.
caught one of
Mm-hmm.
these ever.
Looks like it's got white on the end of the tail
It does, yeah.
and under the
And the
chin.
belly and the crest is all white too.
All right. We got Eastern kingbird.
So, all right, only a few more. Oftentimes, when you look at warblers, this is all you see, looking straight up. That's why in
Mm-hmm.
the Warbler Guide, it has a whole page of all the undertail covert views,
All
underside view.
right. We got a
Do
guess
we get
black
this?
and white warbler.
Right. Good job.
Uh,
Now, we'll finish it with two hard ones. This one is often confused. There's another one that's very similar, and the key thing you look at is the undertail coverts. This one has white, and this other one that they often confuse it with has yellow on the
all right. We
undertail.
got Karen's guess is Nashville.
No, I wish I had caught a Nashville. They have an eye ring, white eye ring and a grayish head hood kind of thing. But this
Orange
one's named
crown?
after a state, if that helps. A southern state.
So sorry. Okay. Oh, and we have a guess of Tennessee.
There you go. All
Tennessee.
right. Now this is oftentimes people will ask me, what's the rarest, weirdest thing you've ever caught? I mean, we catch red-shouldered hawks, we've caught screech owls, we've caught, that Chuckwell's widow is probably right up there. But this surprised me. I caught this I forgot to mention we have one net that's I call it the canopy net. It's the poles are 20 feet tall, so we're trying to get the net up off the ground and up towards the canopy of the forest. I wish we could get one 30 feet up there, but anyway, at school, I think it was in the spring, had this bird was in the canopy net, and about 2 or 3 feet away from it was a summer tanager. And I honestly, I'd never seen one of these in Florida before, and I wasn't exactly sure what it was. So thankfully, I had, FaceTime. I could email a friend who's a bird bander in Ohio, and just to confirm what I thought it was. But I was shocked. So, any guesses on this one? They will come to feeders during the winter. We get a few of them almost every winter, it seems. But normally they're out west. Any guesses? Well, the bill is a giveaway. It's got a large bill, pretty good sized bird, has these white wing bars, and they're related to our summer and scarlet versions.
Karen's guessing Oriole.
No, the Orioles are in the blackbird family. They have a more of a thinner, more pointed bill, but I could see, yeah, they might get confused with an Oriole. These guys eat probably larger insects and bigger fruits, maybe. That will make you suffer. Yeah, this was a
All right,
shock.
Western tanager, a female.
Yeah, one of these days maybe we'll catch a male, but I don't know. That would be something else. So I can stop sharing if you like, or I can go to, let's see, if I have any questions.
Oops, let me go
Right,
to the
I'm open to
top.
questions. I don't turn into a pumpkin for a little bit longer.
All right. We did have, well, a lot of comments. Awesome presentation. The birds never stop amazing me. But Laura did ask, the birds seem so calm when they're being handled and studied. Besides settling in the bag, are there certain directions you give the assistants around that?
Not talking around the birds for sure. Now there are some birds that, I mean, this may be misleading, and there are certain birds, I'd say woodpeckers are the worst. Maybe they're just high energy or something, but a red-bellied woodpecker will scream, even though, it's not being, it's piercing. It's so loud. Those are the ones. And there are a few other species that seem to be more, I don't know what to say, um, prone to being struggling more or stressing them out. But there are certain holds. The hold that you're seeing right here is called the photographer's grip. So we're just holding the bird's legs, and if we're just going to get a quick picture and then we let it go, and then we put it in what's called the bander's grip. So the grip, I'm holding the bird. I cradle the bird's skull between my forefinger and my second finger, and then I'm holding the back of the bird is against my palm of my hand, so the bird can't flap its wings. So that grip is to keep it from hurting itself. And you can safely, look at the bird. You can pull out one wing to look at it, but you can look at the fat, and you can get the band on the bird's leg without it being injured. So um, I don't know if that answered the question, but yeah, the other techniques, it's again just being quick, efficient, quiet, put them in the bag, and then when we take them out of the bag, we don't spend a whole lot of time, banding the bird. And then, depending on, we watch the bird for if it's stressed out. Some signs of stress might be the bird's eyes are drooping, or if it's panting, especially if it's a hot day, those are signs of stress. So again, we take a few pictures, let the bird go, and it's gone. So, but if it's a larger bird, blue jays, other birds, catbirds, vireos, we could hold on to them for quite a while, and you know, they don't seem to be worse for wear. So,
All right. Other than that, we had some comments that it seems to be hard for some people to keep their cats inside. Great presentation. Um, and that was fun. Karen said that was fun. Thanks.
good.
Very interesting. Thank you. And pretty cool. So,
I should tell you, April 12th is when we're doing, that's the next public bird banding demonstration in Hammock Park. And it does coincide with the Florida Nature and Birding Festival that is in the Tampa area. So I don't know if anybody's come over for that. But this is one of the field trips. But it fills up pretty quickly. But honestly, you can come on your own because it's a public park. We're open to the public. Um, we're there early. I mean, we tell people they can come between 8 in the morning till noon, and then we're done. We take everything down. It's better to be there early. We're there at 6, setting everything up in the dark. But the first net run, we come back with birds is usually around 7:30 or 8 o'clock. So that's in Dunedin. And if you just follow, you can send me an email, or you can just follow it on my WordPress site, the blog, and I'll post it there. Um, and then you can come check it out for yourself, which would be great. And if you can't make it this spring, say you're birding somewhere else, you can always catch us in the fall. So,
yeah, it's always very cool to see the banding.
yeah, but there's no guarantees. Just I want to make that clear. Some days you catch, I mean, we have had days where we caught zero. Not often, but even out on Caladesi, I didn't tell you how many nets we set up. In the hammock, we set up nine, 9 to 10 nets. Caladesi, we're up to 22 nets. And even with 22 nets, there's some days we catch three, four, five, six birds. You just, sometimes the birds aren't around or the weather's not conducive, but then you get a big day of 135 birds. So we usually do pretty well in the hammock, usually between 20 to, and some days 80. I think 80 or so is about the most we've caught in the hammock. So, and it's been fun. I mean, catching the winter wren and then seeing the birders come scrambling the next day trying to find it. That was interesting. So good luck finding that bird. So
Yeah, those.
anyway, so yeah, check it out. And if you can't come all the way over to Dunedin, check it out. I think Andrew's banding in Lake Lotus. He doesn't he do a
Mhm.
demonstration usually with the banding for the birding festival or
No, because
sometime?
ours is in the winter, and he says it's not the best time. He does the best in the fall migration. But
Yeah.
those are Sundays in the fall, particularly. And he does have a blog that you can find, Wekiva Basin Banding Station.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Boy, if you could find a good field habitat, you could catch a lot of cool sparrows and stuff. So um,
At
for
our
banding
Papa
over
Birding
there,
Park someday.
Yeah, maybe
there you
someday that would
go.
be fun.
Let me
Yeah.
know if he can't do it. I'd be willing to come over and do it. So now that my permit, it's been very strange recently. The state of Florida no longer requires a permit. But yeah, I should have mentioned you need
Oh,
to have training, obviously, and um, a federal bird banding permit. So you have to, and it's an apprentice kind of system. So when I moved to Florida, I had to find a master bird bander. And maybe some of you know, or some of your viewers may know Marianne Carosi, who
Yes.
she was very involved in the Clearwater Audubon. She lived in Palm Harbor, and so I mentored under her or sub-permitted under her for several years before she moved up to Tallahassee to work for Audubon, Florida. But so yeah, and you can't buy these nets. You can't go to Walmart. I joke with the kids, but you can't go to Walmart and buy these nets and start catching birds. It's illegal for one, but you can't. They won't even sell you these nets. The scientific equipment companies. Now I've heard you can get some of these online. You can get anything on Amazon. Unfortunately, people use these same kinds of nets to catch birds for pet trade or for eating birds in other parts of the world. So,
oh,
um, but yeah, it's a but this is a long way of saying apparently I can now ban anywhere in Florida because originally my ban was restricted to the Tampa Bay area.
Okay.
So
Well,
the
that
five
sounds like a
southern
great
ranches.
option.
So I could,
We'll be in
yeah,
touch for the festival.
yeah.
yeah, sure. You know how to reach me. So any other questions? If not, hopefully we'll see you out birding and you can come visit us at the banding in Dunedin Hammock Park in the spring.
Nice.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Great.
All right.
All right. We'll
And you
say goodnight
recorded
to
this, right?
everybody. Yep.
All
Thank you
right.
so much. We'll
All
say goodnight.
right.
Good
Have a
night,
great night.
everybody.